Well, welcome to WAY2B TV, where there's a better way to be than atheist or theist. For the last 2 weeks, we have been building the playlist Woe to You Religion concerning Jesus' dressing down the leaders of organized religion of his day. The reported thoughts of Jesus, written at about a half century after his death, sound a lot like the churches in the United States today. At least they seem to match my own experience while pastoring for those churches. But at any rate, we're going to continue that discussion tonight. Y'all be thinking about your church stories and whatnot. Let's see here. As we move through this evening, we want your questions and comments. There are several ways to do this. First, callers can call 863-940-0047. Secondly, we have an active Twitter feed on screen throughout the broadcast. Just tweet hashtag WAY2B TV. The chat room is open. On a computer monitor, you should see the chat room to the right of your video stream. If you're watching a PC full screen, you will not see the chat room. You can interact with us in between broadcasts by email at interact@way2b.org. And you can text the Way to 22828 to receive our newsletter each Thursday morning. Each newsletter will have a direct link to the broadcast. The newsletter will also have a discussion starter for the video that we do that night. Finally, to receive direct notices each time we upload, please subscribe to our WAY2B TV channel on YouTube. When you see the WAY2B TV logo in the bottom right-hand corner, you can subscribe directly by clicking on the logo. This would help us greatly. Well, we have Joni with us tonight. If I can find her, there she is.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. I am sure. So how are you this evening? What's the word?
I'm tired, like everybody else this time of day.
Yeah, you work all day and come home, and then I keep you up all night.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just like normal.
Right. Well, I see that we have Colleen and Carol and Mary and Jan on with us. Carol, do you have Betty with you? So hopefully we've got several people tonight as we talk about the experience the experience of the church. This next Thursday evening, will probably be the last one we do on Woe to You Religion in this playlist, and then we'll move on to the WAY2B. Everybody wanted me to start the WAY2B first, and that's because everybody likes the WAY2B the best, and I do too. Quite frankly, I like teaching it the best because I like good news, and it's the good news without question. The WAY2B is the good news, but the kingdom of heaven, being a figure of speech, causes a lot of people a lot of stress. And then at the same time, woe to you religion. It seems like nobody ever wants to talk about the fact that Jesus could be so frank and be so harsh. Of course, we really don't know what Jesus ever said, obviously, because what we're looking at is the writings of someone who wrote a half century after Jesus died. And so we're basically taking his word for it that whatever scuttlebutt was going around was reported accurately, and that he wrote accurately what was reported. And all of that is probably pretty unlikely. But nonetheless, it gives us some idea. Now, all I ever look for is just the contiguous line of thought of Jesus, and I hope to find it there. I think there is some richness in the Bible, and there's some teaching that's very important to how to live our lives in community with other people. And that's what I'm looking for, and that's what I would like to teach. And I think religion would have done well for the last 2,000 years. Christian religion would have done well to do exactly that. If somehow or another the Christian religion could have taught people the way to be, as opposed to arguing over all the supernatural aspects of religion, whose book, whose prophet, whose belief, whose God, who deserves to be rewarded after death, who doesn't deserve to be rewarded after death, who are the good people, who are the bad people. That's what's come out of religion. And unfortunately, that's caused a lot of tension in the world and a lot of discomfort. The good that the church has done is to be applauded. But the good is coming out of the way. I can assure you, the good is not coming out of all of the argument over the supernatural stuff. And so tonight we're going to continue to talk about the stuff, the staff, and the rituals. And in the video this evening, the ancient writer continues his portrayal of Jesus' warnings concerning religion. Jesus' followers were reportedly known as people of the way. The ancient writer depicts Jesus as being in the way of the way. It depicts religion of being in the way of the way. The video this evening contains a brief summary of where we have been and then explores the writer's view of Jesus' attitude toward the stuff, the staff, and the rituals. So let's watch that video and then we'll begin our discussion tonight. We need to summarize a bit briefly before we get started. In the previous Woe to You Religion videos, we heard an ancient writer's portrayal of Jesus' introduction to the problem of religion. The writer represents Jesus as saying religion has seated itself in the chair of Moses. In other words, religion calls upon tradition as its authority by placing itself on the throne of former religious leaders. And the writer goes on. Religious leaders burden their followers and make no effort regarding the burden they themselves created. Everything religion does is to be noticed. Religion wants to be revered. Religious leaders wear elaborate clothing. They want to be put on display and honored. Likewise, religious leaders adopt lofty titles. The ancient writer has Jesus saying to religious leaders, "Don't seek to exalt yourself. One is actually more respected when one is humble." Jesus' followers were reportedly known as people of the way. In his first woe to religion, the ancient writer depicts Jesus as saying that if religion wants to pave the way for people of the way, religious leaders must first be followers of the way themselves. Religion is, after all, an impediment to being in the way. Then the writer has Jesus giving an example of the kind of burden religion places on a follower's shoulder. He accuses religion of being callous. He says religion would devour a widow's house while standing before her, making long, lofty, and public prayers. The ancient writer continues his portrayal of Jesus' contiguous line of thought by reflecting upon the religious process. He says that religion searches far and wide for adherents. The more religion attracts, the more labor and financial resources religion has to devour. In the process, religion makes many people miserable. In this video, the ancient writer has Jesus continuing his line of thought with religion's blind devotion to stuff, staff, and rituals. Woe to you, blind guides, who say whoever swears by the temple, that is nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the temple, that one is obligated. You fools and blind ones, which is more important, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whoever swears by the altar, that is nothing, but whoever swears by the offering upon it, that one is obligated. You blind ones, which is more important, the offering or the altar that sanctifies the offering? Therefore, the one who swears by the altar swears both by the altar and everything on it. And the one who swears by the temple swears both by the temple and by the one who dwells within it. And the one who swears by heaven swears both by the throne of God and the one who sits upon it. Religion willfully creates blindness by the complexity of its arguments. Are we devout to, swear by, the building or the money that built it? Are we devoted to the offering or the place where we laid it? Will devotion be to the stuff or the money that brought it? To money or the ritual that brought it? The writer does not have Jesus saying to be devoted to both and, nor to be devoted to either or. He says, be devoted to neither. To be devoted to one is still all the same as being devoted to the other. As a minister, I hear Jesus concluding, parishioners can either be loyal to the building and the revered one who stands before them, within it, or to the kingdom of heaven, the way. In other words, it's the way or religion. One cannot internalize both. The ancient writer then contrasts the choice between devotion to stuff, staff, and rituals with being devoted to, swear by, the kingdom of heaven. The writer has Jesus addressing what religion neglected. Woe to you, religion, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others. You blind guides, who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. The writer has Jesus addressing an ancient religious law of obligation to give 10% to religion. He contrasts the practice of religiously obeying the law and other provisions of the law with neglecting the genuine way. Again, the Jesus metaphor is simple. We swallow religion's glut of stuff, staff, and rituals while filtering out the way to be content in life. Why do we do that? All right. Colleen, I don't know what you meant by human HOA. I was reading that as I was finishing up the video there. It seems to me that we think about rituals differently than maybe we ought to. Jan said some people believe that rituals are important because they ground us. What do y'all think about that? And Colleen says, I'm fine with rituals unless it locks one into a set way to live by someone else's rules. And I understand what you're saying there. My biggest problem with rituals, the way I look at rituals, my biggest problem with rituals is that they substitute. So many things that we do at church substitutes. I don't think we realize that until, I know I didn't really realize it until seminary and since then, is that so much of what church is about causes us to substitute the act of giving to church, working in church, going to church, and doing the rituals of church, and talking the language of church, and so forth. In other words, it's not about walking the walk and talking the talk. It's about managing your thoughts. The comfort, the contentment, the grounding, all of those things that we want in life come out of the way. They come out of our ability to, in whatever state we find ourselves, to find therein a way to be content, as Paul said. But the point is that we substitute. We do these things every 7 days, going to church, and in the process, I think maybe we set aside actually trying to be our own carpenter of improving our own, doing our own home improvement project, if you will, on ourselves. That instead we go through the motions of all that, and it substitutes for actually putting the effort in it takes to change oneself. Now that's just my thoughts about it, but it sure has seemed that way to me from the viewpoint of a pastor in a church. And it's also seemed that way to me looking back upon being a leader in a church, seeing that same thing, and how attached people are to certain rituals and certain things. You could change the order of worship, just change the order of the service, and there would be certain people in the church that might near go ballistic over it. You could change the music a little bit, same thing. And you see what I'm saying? In other words, we become almost combative over doing those rituals in a ritualistic way. We religiously do things. That's an expression that we use all the time. She went on her paper route religiously, okay? In other words, she did it every time. Jan says, well, what about holidays such as Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, and Christmas? Are they considered rituals too? I think they're considered like a good meal, good time.
I think there's a fine line between tradition and ritual. I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition is tradition, and ritual is ritual. And I think tradition There are some things that, if you let it, like our traditions are changing because of the people who are entering our life, our circle. Uh, some of the foods that I'm fixing now have got a kind of an Italian bent for them because my daughter-in-law and all her children, which makes up the bigger part of the crowd most of the time, have Italian tastes and preferences. So uh, our traditions have grown when our two families melded, and now we have their recipes and our recipes of our traditions, and we just we evolve. And I think as people who are in church, we forget to evolve. We forget to strain at the traces and improve and think and delve deeper, and we take what's given to us from the pulpit because we don't study our Bibles.
Right.
We don't. Well, all we do is listen, and if we're hand fed everything, and it seems okay, well that fits with everything I understand and believe. You never strain at the traces, and you never step outside the box.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's ritual.
Yeah.
Traditions change. Rituals can too. I don't know how often they do because I've been away from church for a long time now.
Well, it's funny. From my point of view, from that pulpit, it's true. You can, and if you've never worked in it, you don't realize it is a job, first of all. And that you stand there in that pulpit and you say soothing words and you purposely do what you do along with the rest of the service where the music is there and all the different things and the offering and communion and all these different things. And you don't realize that you are, in essence, the leader of the substitution for straining at the traces, as you say. In other words, you are the very one who brings to the table something else to do than work on yourself. Okay? And if a preacher was to get it up in the pulpit and Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, not judge people by name or anything like that, but just get up there and talk about nothing but how this congregation needs to improve, that some of you need to do this and some of you need to do that and some of you need to think this away and some of you need to quit thinking that away. And if you did that Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, your job would, yes, your job would be short-lived. And so it is absolutely a job, and ministers who are doing it Sunday after Sunday come to realize that. And that was a problem for me. And it was a problem for me because I don't want to do that with people. I'm not judging them in the first place, and I am not judging them in teaching the way. In other words, I want to be able to just talk to a group of people, be able to talk about the way, let them contemplate on it and stew on it and think about it for themselves and implement it into their lives the way that they choose. But not be so busy with religious things that they don't even have the need to think about it or the time to think about it because they've substituted religion for this project that each and every one of us as a human being have. And that project is to learn how to live in community with other people and to be content even though a large portion of the people you live in community with are jerks. Okay? You have to be able to do that. So, in other words, we need to be able to, I would love, and that's what I'm trying to do now, I would love for our Sunday afternoon group to continue to develop into a group of people who come from all different backgrounds, believe all different kinds of things. We're not trying to convert anybody to anybody or from anything to anything. All we are trying to do is to talk about the way. And it seems like that's the one thing we have that we share in common on Sunday afternoons. We have an interest in this way of being that seems to be the contiguous line of thought of this ancient person named Jesus. I better start reading chats because they are going crazy on the chat room. All right, let's see here. Golly, Bill, y'all. Colleen says, I believe ritual fills a need that needs to be filled, but if we stop there, we never truly understand all that Jesus has to teach us. And she says, one of my sisters lives in Germany, and the state automatically takes 10% out of their pay for the Catholic Church. I'm sure the Protestant Church would love to have that deal. Jan says, wow. Colleen says, I simply view holidays as great days to spend with family and food and so forth. Yeah, I think holidays are, probably a good example of that. The atheist group that I listen to down in Austin, Texas sometimes, that group talked about Christmas for a long time one day. Most of the show was about it and about that sort of thing, about Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter and all that. And most people don't realize atheists have Christmas trees, they put presents under it, they sing songs, they give gifts to each other. It's a time of love and joy and food and fellowship. They see it the same way that most all of us see it. And so
do American Jews.
Yeah, and so do American Jews, exactly. So it seems to me that maybe we think that the holidays, if you do a good study of how Christmas came to be, Christmas is a pagan holiday. It's something that was brought about by religious people who believed in more than one God and so forth. Christmas is not a part of the Bible at all. No one could even interpret the Bible of Jesus saying, or anyone ever saying, you should celebrate Christmas or celebrate the birth of Jesus. Now, there is some inferences about celebrating the Passover at the time that Jesus was crucified. There is some inference about celebrating that time, or at least observing that time, doing in remembrance of that time, that sort of thing. But certainly not Christmas. Carol said we should not be satisfied with the high ritual gives us. And it's true, Carol. I've watched that. There are some people who get an absolute high out of doing certain things, especially communion. There must be more to our relationship with God and with each other. Carol says, you guys keep saying my thoughts before you read them. I guess that's good. Yeah, because you're really smart, Carol. So and we are too. So we think of them faster than you can type. When you were talking about the high that they receive, though, in my church in Massachusetts, one of the big things for the 50% or so that were former Roman Catholics, for them was that because they were gay or divorced or something, whatever it was, they had been disallowed communion. Their children could not be baptized in the church as infants. They couldn't be married in the church as young adults, and so forth. And so they considered that a huge loss. And so one of the things that was going on up there was I had a number of people who still wanted to do the ritual. The stuff and the staff and the ritual is still what they were all about. And they left the Catholic Church and came to the Protestant Church, in this case the United Church of Christ, in order that they might be able to do the things the Catholics denied them. And they considered it valuable. I've had other people down here actually say that to me, that when the Catholics would not allow me to do communion, for instance, and now when I take communion, it's a big deal to me because I can take communion where I couldn't before. For me, the real sadness is that Catholic guilt seems to linger on and on and on and on and on. In other words,
because defiance can't kill guilt, and that's all that is defiance.
I guess that's true, but in other words, the real crime of it is that those things that you can list that you can now do that you couldn't do when you were Catholic, the fact that you can do them now, the fact that they still hold that importance in your life, that's the crime of it. Because the truth is, you don't need communion. You don't need to get married in a church. You don't need babies baptized, or adults baptized for that matter. Whatever your relationship is and whatever you call theos, and however you look at what theos is, which is just the Greek word for God, but however you look at that, that's your business. It's not something that you get or receive as a result to kowtowing to religion. And I think that's an important point in what we do at WAY2B is that we're looking for how is it human beings are made and what are the basic needs of human beings related to interaction with one another and related to having contentment within oneself, even though you might struggle hardship, even though someone might be terribly rude to you or cause you a problem, even though natural catastrophes happen. And people die of cancer and people don't die of cancer. And it's long since been proven that all these things happen equally to the devout and the non-devout. In other words, there is no attachment to religion that causes you to have less frequency of hardships or more frequency of joy. That is up to you. You get up every morning of this world and you decide today, how am I going to take this day and how am I going to be in this day? And that's up to you. It really is up to you. And I think it's a really important point. Colleen said, I agree, Carol. And then Jan says, so we are talking about certain aspects of a Sunday Christian service. And Colleen says, they just don't attach the religious to it all. And Carol says, what nerve to shut people out of church because of judgment. And Colleen says, yes, it does. And then Jan says, with regards to staffing, Mary and I remember a man who followed the pastor all over the country as she moved around. We always thought of this as cultish. And it is one of the things that goes on. I know it's hard to believe, but I have actually had my groupies, okay? And I don't like it. I don't really like that. It makes me feel uncomfortable, not just for me, but for them too. I don't want somebody to look at me that way. I certainly don't want them to see me as something that they should follow around, and certainly not move from place to place to place. But I've also known of that. Joni had a lady that attached herself to her one time, and we thought it was going to get to be serious. I mean, it got to the stage of stalking almost. And so it can be a difficult thing. I would think a religious leader who enjoys that, well, you know, to use an expression, heaven help him, because that's not a good sign that they actually would enjoy that. Colleen says, my parish and priest were and probably still are extremely judgmental. But that's the nature of religion. Because, and one of the phrases I like to use is, religion is about who are you better than, okay? I had a mentor in seminary, and Dr. Bailey. Dr. Bailey allowed me into his upper level homiletics course, which is just a fancy name for preaching. And he allowed me into it. You were supposed to have already taken Greek and Hebrew at that point. I took it the first semester as a freshman and not had any Greek and Hebrew. And he let me in there. I went to his office and begged him to let me in there because he was the national chair council on preaching. And I really wanted to study under him, and I wanted to hear what he had to say. I wound up making an A in his class. But he told me one day in his office, he said, you want to be popular in a church when you get out of here? I said, well, you know, I guess every minister wants to be popular. He said, well, here's what you do. He said, you'll get free green fees, free country club membership, once in a while a car. He said, you'll get lots of free meals. Everything, you know, it'd just be a really nice deal for you. He said, and here's all you have to do. You go in each Sunday morning and you talk about those people out there. You talk about those people out there. Don't talk about the people in here. You talk to those people out there. Now, you won't accomplish a darn thing. You won't do them any good. You won't do you any good. But you'll live pretty good. You'll have a pretty good life doing it. And I believe some preachers are doing exactly that. Some ministers are doing exactly that. And of course, he was being facetious because when he preached, you listened, because it was about the people sitting right there in front of him, and it was about himself. And it was not personal. It was not accusatory. It was not judgmental, as Colleen and Carol have talked about. It was about how to grow as a person. And that's what I admired about him, and that's why I wanted to take his class so bad, because that's what interests me. And seminary taught me, as I always like to say, seminary taught me so many things, much of which Southern Baptist Seminary wishes they had not, or did not intend to. Because I learned a lot there about just exactly how much religion is a house of cards, and just exactly how it's put together with spit and glue. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. It really is a fragile china cup sort of a thing, and it will fall apart quickly. And when you go to seminary, your eyes are opened if you're a serious student. And the older the student is, and I was 45 when I went to religion. I'm 60 when I went to seminary. The religion when I went to seminary, and I'm 64 now. And the fact is that I didn't follow the professors around like puppy dogs. Me and my friends, we thought for ourselves, and all of my friends were second career people too, and so we thought for ourselves, and we talked to each other a lot about what was going on amongst ourselves, related to this house of cards and the difficulty that is there, and the fragileness of what is being taught. Let's see here. We gotta catch up again on this chat room. It keeps jumping up and down over here. Carol said, I would follow you because of what you teach me. I haven't found that anywhere else yet. And I would only say to that, Carol, do some study for yourself, validate things for yourself, try out things for yourself, and forget about me altogether. Don't follow me, but look at what Jesus' contiguous line of thought was. And I really do think that's what you've taught, what you've attached yourself to. You know, you and I know each other pretty well because you've been listening to me for years now. But the fact is that you came out of a situation that most people could not have gotten out of. You came out of a situation that was it took a lot of courage and a lot of willpower to get out of that situation and to get yourself with a decent life. And I think that you had been burdened by religion. I think you felt guilty about yourself. And if you go into a church somewhere, if you enjoy that church, that's great. But if that pastor gets up there and makes you feel guilty, stop going. Because that should not be the purpose of the church. There was a First Baptist Church of Nashville, Tennessee. That pastor, while I lived up there, he actually said, and it was going all around our church at Southeast Baptist, but he actually said, I am leaving this church, and I'm going to start me a church, and there will not be one word of guilt for anyone. There will no longer be any teachings in my church related to what's wrong with people. And in Southeast Baptist, where I was, the ones that were telling me this in order that they criticize him for having said that. Because we're addicted to that every 7 days getting a whooping. And we don't need a whooping every 7 days. We don't need a whooping every month or year. You ought to be able to live your life without feeling like somebody has got to prop you up, and somebody else has got to validate you all the time. If religion can get you to feeling like the only validation you're going to receive is going to come from the church, then what are you going to do? You're going to be like my hound dog. You're going to follow me around. So don't do that. Yeah, don't do that. And I appreciate all the kind things that people say sometimes, but please don't attach yourself to me. Attach yourself to what you believe is the contiguous line of thought of Jesus. And I promise you, he was not the first person to teach it, and he is not the last person to teach it. There have been many people who've tried to help people learn how to improve themselves in order that they might be content in the world the way it is, without any supernatural effect upon it. But instead, simply learn how to live as the person that you are and to be the good person that you know yourself to be. Let's see. Jan says following someone versus following the teaching of the way are different. And that's true. That's exactly true. And Carol said, I agree. Because we don't need to follow someone. We need to think about, what is it we believe? And I just call it the way. But the fact is that you can call it anything you want to. I don't care if you call it, as the Buddhists do, I don't care if you call it karma and dharma, okay? It doesn't matter to me what you call it. What I encourage people to do is develop within yourself this resilience that Jesus talked about. Build your house upon solid ground, and when the storms come and the winds come, then you can stand there, and you can be all the way through it. And don't build your house upon it. Following someone is the sand. It really is the sand, because that person's going to trip up and mess up for sure. They're going to fail you. They're going to die, or they're going to move to some other state, as we were just talking about, and then you ain't going to have the money to follow them around. Okay, so just look at what it is you believe, and you need to believe. You want to believe that you believe is the right thing to believe. Colleen says, that is why I love reading, trying to follow the Dalai Lama's teachings, grounded in self-happiness. And absolutely, that's exactly what he's talking about. I follow him on Twitter myself, but the Dalai Lama just talks about how in the world does a person know peace inside. Well, guess what? Like I said, Jesus isn't the first and he isn't the last to have taught this sort of thing. And I think he did a good job of it, though. And because I was raised Southern Baptist and born into a Christian family, a multi-generational Baptist family, where my grandfather was one of the founders of the church that I went to, that started in his living room, and it grew to like over 1,000 people. The fact is that that's what I knew. I knew the teachings of Jesus, and I knew the Bible, and I knew that scene. And therefore, that's why I teach the way I teach. I teach out of that knowledge. But it is not exclusive knowledge. In other words, I am not a monotheist who believes it's my way or the highway to hell. Okay? I'm a person who believes that each and every one of us can be at peace and know that happiness throughout their lives, no matter what's going on around them. No matter what's going on around. You ever see somebody who's bedridden and sick, and they've got this spirit about them that's just out of this world? They decided to do that. That's what a lot of people don't realize. It ain't just who they are. They made a decision to do that. They made a decision that, yes, I know I'm sick and I can't get up out of this bed, but I also know that I don't have to be miserable. And that is a decision that you have to make in life. And if you don't make that decision for yourself, nobody else can make it for you. Nobody can give you anything. Nobody can teach you anything. Nobody can talk to you from a pulpit. You can't sing songs. You can't do rituals. There's nothing that will bring it to you but that decision within yourself that I want to be that person, and I can learn how to be that person. And there are many other people who have learned how to be that person. Carol said, I'd only follow you to Tennessee on the chat room. Y'all may not know, but Carol I think she used to live in Tennessee. Jan says, meditation, introspection, and mindfulness, the new buzzword, are helpful in attaining self-growth and contentment. And I agree. Many people, I don't think, realize that meditation, introspection, and mindfulness is another word for what? A religious word that you've heard all your lives. All of you all have. Prayer. Prayer. I used to say all the time, and matter of fact, I had a seminary professor. Now, this Southern Baptist seminary professor, and I say, are you telling me, I went up to him after class, are you telling me that when we pray, it has no effect over God, and that it has no effect over circumstances? So there's a girl in our church who, or a lady in our church who knows this girl, I think is the way it was, that had had a terrible car wreck, and we had been praying for her, and that has no effect over her. And it was the president of the seminary whose class I was in that day. And so he said, I think that your prayers have an effect over the way you feel about it, about how you attach your life to it, about how much help you would render to a person if they needed it, and so forth. And I've come to agree with him. And that particular theologian, I don't agree with him on much. But at the same time, I've come to agree with him in that regard. I think when we pray, let's say that as a Christian person, you pray constantly for your relative who is sick and may die, and you want them to get well, and you don't want them to die, and that's obvious, okay? And you love them very much. Now, this goes on for 6 months, let's say, and they die. What has prayer done for you? Well, prayer has prepared you for them to die. You know? Prayer gets you, it's introspection, mindfulness, and meditation that gets you ready for that moment that you probably pretty much expect is going to come, but you don't want it to come. That's what it is. That's prayer. And so I don't think when Christians pray, it is worthless. But I think it affects the prayer. I can pray all day for you to get a new car, and I can promise you, it ain't going to happen. Okay? I can pray all day for you to get well, for your grass to grow, for you to get a better house, for your children to behave themselves, whatever I can think of. And I am not going to change your life by praying. But if I'm that concerned about your family, I might wind up mowing your grass and babysitting your kids. You see what I mean? That's meditation, introspection, mindfulness. It puts you in the right frame of mind to be who you need to be in that situation you're concerned about. And I don't know. I feel like that's the way it is. Jan says, Carol, you are so funny. Colleen said, very true. I don't know if that's talking about the funny part, but I don't think so. Carol says, if you go to Texas, you're on your own.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I don't think I want to go to Texas. Jan says, but with YouTube, it seems you could go to Texas. LOL. And yeah, I mean, the YouTube, quite frankly, is a to use another phrase, a godsend. Okay, YouTube is an opportunity, if you will, for someone like me who wants to teach. I mean, I used to have shake people's hands on the way out the door, and sometimes they would say, they thought my sermon today stunk or something. Every once in a while, you'd get a sideways, nasty comment from a parishioner going out the door. The preacher at First Baptist Church preached one Sunday, and he used a book they'd been reading as an illustration. And the old guy that went out the door shook his hand and said, "Great book report, wrong book." In other words, he shouldn't have used a secular book to talk about whatever it is he was talking about that morning. Parishioners can be very ugly. Well, when I get through here, all I have to do is turn off the lights. I don't have to. I don't have to fight that. Some of them like me and some of them don't like me thing. You all the same position as I am. You can flip a switch and I'm done. You can decide who you want to listen to and who you don't want to listen to. And I think YouTube is a pretty neat platform in that regard. There's a group that I was telling you guys about where the atheists and theists are all mixed together, and they have these Google Hangouts, and they talk about their stuff together, and it's it's headed up by a fellow by the name of Dr. Jones, and it's purposely an environment in which people do not derail each other. People do not cause one person to feel minimized in the conversation, but they respect one another, and they still speak their mind. They still have their thoughts, and they have reasons for them. And some of them are PhD philosophers, and some of them, you can tell, are not very educated at all. But the point is that it's the right environment for that conversation. Well, I applied to their group on Facebook. They have a private group on Facebook, but you can't get in it without applying to it, and then they approve you after you apply. And I guess I just want to make sure you're not some kind of a spam person or some kind of a stalker or something or whatever. But anyway, I applied to it, and yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday I got word from through Facebook that I had been approved, and I went over there, and sure enough, it was all open, and I could see it all and read it and so forth, and I can type and I can participate in it, and I was really tickled to death about that. I'm hoping that YouTube will open up a larger world for me, in order that I be able, because there's other people out there that feel the way that I do, and feel about religion the way that I do, and they don't feel like the hard atheist, that all of it is just a waste and a delusion, and they don't feel like the fundamentalist Christian, that everybody else is going to hell but them. But instead, they're a group of people who are truly interested in one another with all different kinds of beliefs all over the spectrum, and I really like that. I think it's wonderful. Carol said, "True. I'm still not sure how I feel about prayer. I know it is important to my mom, and that's what counts. You should continue to feel about prayer, Carol, the way that you do, and your mom should too. I'm just simply offering my comments related to what prayer would mean to me. It's just another word for that introspection, that mindfulness, that meditation. It's done me a lot of good over the years, and one of the reasons
any small amount doing it either.
Huh?
You've not spent a small amount of time doing that either.
No.
You've been almost obsessive compulsive.
Right. And I mean, when I get up in the mornings, I find that one of the reasons I can face life to the degree that I can, I still have things that I'm working on seriously, but to the extent that I can face life the way that I can, considering my cultural circumstances in life, one of the big reasons for that is that if I sit down and I center myself and I think about what it is that's bothered me and what it is I'm having to deal with and where I can go from here, that is the reason that I won't sit in a home alone and just mully-grub and eat worms. But instead, I'll get up and I'll find people, and I'll purposely. My goal many times when I go to breakfast, I'm going to make 5 people smile. I'm going to get at least 3 of them to laugh out loud. Seriously, because the fact is, that's living. That's how people live. Our interaction with other people is what really makes life. All these goals and things that we set, even this TV show and so forth, everything that we do like that is just dust behind us at some point in life. But who are we in the community of other people? And who are we for those other people? And how are we when those other people are troubled and have problems? You know? But religion is largely about, and that's what I was starting to say about Dr. Bailey, when he said, go in and preach about those people out there. A large part of what religion is about is who are you better than? Because the people out there, those are the bad people. The people in here, we're the good people. And we're going to play golf on Monday, aren't we? Yeah, and we're going to go out to eat after church and so forth. But the bad people, they're out there. And they're not here this morning. And so religion depends upon that feeling. I used to call it puffing up people's chest and deflating their minds. And I think a lot of times that's what Sunday morning does. I can puff you up and I can make you feel like $1 million, and we're the righteous ones. But in the process, I'm not giving you anything that causes you to have that meditation, that mindfulness, that contemplation about yourself and who you are and how are you going to be for yourself and for other people. What kind of a person are you going to be within the community that you live in? Instead, it's about elevating ourselves. And everything about church is about elevating. Certainly Jesus didn't mince words. Lengthen their tassels, broaden their phylacteries. They wear these fine clothes. They get up and make long, lofty prayers while they devour a widow's house. For heaven's sakes, he couldn't have been plainer spoken. If that was the scuttlebutt going around about what he had to say 50 years earlier. And obviously that would have been passed down a generation or two. And then the person accurately reported what that scuttlebutt was. If all of that is true, I think that's the stuff that would have been remembered, because all that other stuff Walking on water is just dust behind him. Okay, he didn't walk on water. But what is important was who was he in his community of people, and what kind of person was he, and could he remain content in life, and did others see that, and is that how they became known as people of the way? And if that's how they became known as people of the way, then I want to know more about it. I want to know as much about it as I can, because I think it's more important to my life than most anything else I can find or do or say or whatever. Oh well, I got to preaching again.
What you do?
Yeah, that's what I do sometimes. Carol said, no, that Jan is the next one. Mary says, many medical studies have been done on the effect of prayer, and what it was found is that if the person knows they are being prayed for, it has been documented to help. I've actually heard that thing two ways, Mary. I heard it on a television show just the other day where they said if people knew they were being prayed for, the studies showed that they got worse. So I don't know how much of that goes one way or the other. I tend to think that if people know they're being prayed for, it does encourage them. That doesn't encourage them that they're being. I don't so much think it encourages them they're being prayed for as it encourages them that people care about them. And I think people need to care about each other, and it encourages me when I discover somebody cares about me. Okay, and I know it does. It encourages you when you discover somebody cares about you. I think that thing. If they know you said it. That if they know you're being prayed for, if they know they're being prayed for, well, what they mean by that is, or what is meant by that, I think, is that if you know you're being prayed for, then you know there are those who care about you. Okay. So anyway, that's just a way that I look at it. Colleen says, I no longer pray in the classic sense. I have conversations with God. One of the sayings in the Bible that I like, you can parse it all day, talks about praying without ceasing. Well, there's a way of being, and all day long, you in essence are praying without ceasing. You are meditating and being mindful of who it is and who you want to be. And you say, okay, whatever happens in life, I can't let it make me someone else I don't want to be. I'm going to make myself this quality person. I'm going to be this person that I want to be. And then no matter how much you get in my face or whatever it is you do that would aggravate most people, you're going to find that I simply do not respond to it that way, because who I am inside is what comes out of me. It's called a visceral response. The viscera is where the internal organs are, and that's where they thought emotion seated in ancient times. A visceral response is where we get the phrase a gut reaction, when you ain't got time to think. And so that visceral response that comes out of me because I pray without ceasing. You get my point? And I think it's pretty important stuff. And we all need to do that. We all need to say to ourselves, how do I mold and make myself into and then maintain that? I don't really, I don't enjoy high maintenance people, but I try to make myself a high maintenance person. That is, I'm high maintenance for myself. I work on myself and try to be a high maintenance person for myself. But the fact is, you won't be a high maintenance person for someone else if you're working on yourself. That's just the way that works. Colleen says, I've been told often I could feel your prayers. I believe there is an energy in prayer. That's a little bit too ethereal for me, but that was Carol, I think, said that. That's a bit too ethereal for me, but nonetheless, you wouldn't know about their prayers. I had a man that was in my church who used to talk about he could predict the birth of babies and their gender. I said, well, you got a 50-50 chance. But all these different things, he said, and I prayed for them and they got well. And it's known as remembering the hits and forgetting the misses. Okay? Obviously, and I told him, I said, he believed himself to be very, very spiritual, and that he moved people and all this kind of stuff. And I said to him, I said, I'll tell you what you do. Because I hadn't been at the church very long when this happened. And it was every Sunday. He was just in my face out in the parking lot, and there's all this stuff all the time. And he wanted me to think well of him, I guess. But anyway, I said, I'll tell you what you do. You do everything you believe God is telling you to do. You do all these things that you're doing now, okay? And you not say one word about it to anyone else, including me, for 6 months. And then you'll know it's not about talking about it. He looked at me pretty funny because it was about talking about it. He wanted me to know, and he wanted me to think well of him from knowing. Well, that pretty much blows the whole idea, doesn't it? So just be yourself and be concerned about other people and your visceral response to those needs and to those things and to being a friend. You got to be a friend to have friends. You ever heard that before? But just work on your own self until your visceral response to the community around you causes you to be someone other people want to be around, not because you bragged enough and so often that they believed you. Jan says, Mary says that that is what medical people thought, but they could not prove it. Mary says, I think that what you say about a person being prayed for is the encouragement that shows caring, and that may be why it is so helpful. Yeah, I don't think there's any... One of the basic human needs is, I want to be wanted. Don't you want to be wanted? We all want to be wanted. We want to be wanted and needed and cared for and appreciated. We want people to struggle with us and help us through things. We want people to grieve with us. One of the best things in the world you can do with a person during a time of grief is to listen to them. Joni is great at this, by the way. I'm not. I run on like a fire hose. You all already know that. But the fact is that that's one of the best things you can do for a person is be there for them. And yeah, that other, what you going to say, Joni?
And listen.
Yeah, and listen. And you may say a word now and then, to kind of move it along and keep the conversation going and let them know that you're still there and you're actually listening. But overall, they're doing the majority of the talking. And when they get through, even at her job where she works, sometimes people come and sit down at her desk and just talk to her, because she's a good listener. A while ago, she gave us a little speech. That's more than she said to me in 6 months. I don't know. No, we talk pretty when we're alone. Yeah, when we're alone, she finally got me to order all new vitamins, and I'm taking them and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, she really bugs me about it.
Every time y'all talk to her, say, take your vitamins.
Yeah. The surgery that I had when I lost the 160 pounds actually produces malnutrition, and so I have to have the vitamins. Well, guess what, guys? It is, what, a minute and a half? No, a minute. There's a minute left, and that's it. So I'm going to have to send you the credits here pretty soon. But I think this has been a pretty good evening so far, and I appreciate all the participation on the chat room. That's been terrific. Every week you guys jump in there. I don't know what I would do because I really thought I was going to start this. This is our 11th show. And I really thought I was going to start this and that at the end, for at least a year, I was going to be sitting here talking to this black box and looking at a big white space where the chat box is. Okay? I really did not fathom that I was going to get so much help. And it has been absolutely wonderful for me. Carol said, see you Sunday on there. Sunday afternoon we do another one of these broadcasts, but it's private. And the invitations go out to a private group of people. And I promised them that I will protect their privacy. So I don't unless they identify themselves, I don't do that. Because some people, they might be there, they're interested in the way. We purposely have our meetings on Sunday afternoons in order that if they want to go to church, they can go to church on Sunday morning if they want to. But we have all kinds of people in there, people who do not believe in the supernatural at all. And we have people who are from very conservative, I would say arguably fundamentalist backgrounds. And so there's a big spectrum of conversation in that room. And the one thing I have noticed, though, is they all respect each other. We don't have a single person in that room that wants to win an argument or run roughshod over the rest of us in order that they might feel like they've made their point. Instead, it seems like every person in there is respectful and wants to care for the people that are there. And to me, that is it. The conversation at the table, that's the reason I say there's a better way to be than atheist or theist. Because when you get right down to it, atheists and theists both seem to be having a problem with realizing that the people are more important than the conversation. Anyway, I'm gonna stop with that, and I'm gonna send you guys the credits. So you guys have a great week. Bye, everybody. Joni, say bye. All right. Okay.